Hello, America, and welcome to the Glenn Beck program and to TheBlaze. This is the network that you are building. Tonight, Foundations of Freedom. We're going to talk with David Barton here in just a minute and go back into our little miniature oval and talk a little bit about what the President of the United States has done and has done in the past. Tonight, we're going to focus on something that is really not clearly understood by the American people. It's the executive order. When a president makes a pitch to the people of America and is unable to sway the polls, he has two options. He can accept the fact that the American people don't want it and then move on to another issue and maybe try again later down the road, or he can just jam it through with an executive order. Expect a whole lot more of these executive orders in the coming 4 years, and expect that their reach to be profound. That's what we're focusing on tonight, because this president has used and has threatened to use executive orders. And anytime you complain about it, you're going to hear somebody say, well, George W. Bush issued 291 executive orders. And they're right. More orders were issued in the first 4 years of George W. Bush than this president's first 4 years. So why would you complain? Tonight, you'll find out the answer. The founders did allow for executive orders, but what were they meant for? It seems a little more Chinese, quite honestly, or a little more European or Italian 1930s than American. But not if you understand the original roots. Tonight, we're going to show you the history of executive orders and how they've been traditionally used, how each president used them, and now how this president is currently using them. In 8 years, George Washington issued a grand total of 8 executive orders. And I have to tell you, when you hear what the first executive order, you'd thank God if this president issued the first executive order that George Washington did. Every successive president issued around 100 or so until, you guessed it, the first progressive president, Teddy Roosevelt. He issued from 100 to 1,081. And then Woodrow Wilson got into it, 1,803. But FDR was the granddaddy of them all. In all, he issued a whopping 3,522 executive orders, and these ones were bad. Some of FDR's remain the most controversial orders of any president in history, including confiscating all gold, and the executive order to start rounding up the Japanese in World War II, put them in internment camps. Yeah, nobody voted for that. The president just did it. No president, number-wise, has even come close since. And Obama isn't exactly churning out orders like FDR or Wilson. But it's not the number of executive orders that matter. It's the reach. It's how you use them. It's why you use them. Obama holds them as his ace in the hole because the American people don't agree with him on virtually every big issue. For example, support for more gun control. It decreases with each passing day. So they have to use emotion over logic like they did today. You put Gabby Gifford's husband up as an expert on gun control laws. He's not. This is all about sympathy, emotion over reason. Same with amnesty. 62% of Americans want to see illegal immigration into the United States stopped. Only 37% support pathways to citizenships for the 11 million illegals living in the shadows. That's right, only 37%. You wouldn't know that watching the mainstream media, would you? But it doesn't matter. Whatever fallout from the abuse of power used to pass amnesty would be negated by the gain in new loyal voters. And if Congress doesn't pass it, believe me, this president will sign it in through executive order. How about climate change? Climate change was pretty popular back in 2008. 80% of Americans believed global warming was real. However, in just 4 years, that number has now dropped to 60%. And if the mainstream media did their job, it'd be lower than that. Only 2% of the American people feel that it's the most important issue facing the country. Now that's kind of low. Only 2% think that it's important. I mean, remember, it's going to flood the earth and destroy all of us. And almost everything we do in our life is reacting as this is one of the most critical things facing us. More than 70% of Americans oppose cap-and-trade policies or any policies that would rely on tax increases on electricity or gas to change individual behavior. So once again, you have to resort to emotion over reason. I want to show you a couple of clips here. Here's the Center for American Progress and daughter of Hugh Hefner. What a surprise you went there. Explaining how global warming is to blame for, of all things, the increase in shootings in Chicago. Watch.
Well, to answer the question about is it higher, yes. Last year, we hit a record number of murders from guns, and this year we're already outpacing last year's numbers. Now, there are contributing factors that are not under anybody's control and may seem odd, but it is factually true. One of them is actually the weather. There is a dramatic increase in gun violence when it is warmer, and we are having this climate change effect that is driving that.
Climate change. It's warmer. That's what everybody's saying in England. And the mayor of London recently sat down at his office and he was watching it snow. And he decided to write a letter to the editor. He says, quote, "I observed that something appears to be up with our winter weather. And to call it warming is obviously to strain the language. I see from the BBC website that there are scientists who say global warming is indeed the cause of the cold and snowy winters we seem to be having. I merely observe that there are at least some other reputable scientists who say this is complete tosh, or at least that there is no evidence to support it. But in the end, it doesn't matter, quite honestly. It doesn't matter how many people come around. If the president can't get the support, the president will use executive orders. I expect that now that this president has more latitude, as he told his good friend Vlad the Impaler Putin, it's going to get worse in the second term. Even Hillary Clinton alluded to this power grab last night on Fox. Watch.
You know, I've been around long enough, so it's not what somebody says, it's what they do. And some of what he's done we have approved of and supported, and some of what he's done, like abrogating a lot of power unto himself personally, reinstating emergency law provisions that had been a hallmark of the Mubarak regime, are very troubling.
Okay, yeah, that is very troubling. Now, we could have edited that, which we did on the radio show, and people fell for it. But I'm not Martin Bashir or MSNBC, so we'll tell you the truth. She's actually talking about Mohamed Morsi in Egypt. But is there any difference? And the craziest thing is, the president isn't breaking any laws or any rules. So now you have to ask yourself the all-important golden question, one word: why? Why does the Constitution give this kind of authority through executive orders so the president, if he chooses, could be more of a third world dictator than the leader of the free world? Why? Tonight, the history and the power of executive orders.